Guess that's it.
We're good.
Okay, so we'll call our meeting to order. First order of business is to look for additions or deletions to the agenda. Anybody have anything? Hearing nothing, we'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
So moved. Support.
Motion support, last chance. All those in favor, is yes.
Yes.
Any opposed is no. Motion's carried. Roll call. I presume you are completed with that? True. Terrific, thank you. Next is Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please rise and lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, okay.
You gonna tear the
I'm
books
okay
up?
with the,
Took that out of his last check.
Yeah. Parting memory.
Next order of business is to entertain the approval of the minutes of the August 9th, 2022 regular meeting. My pleasure.
Support.
Motion supported. Are there comments or questions, corrections, additions, or deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would say no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Communications, we are in receipt of a communication giving notice of retirement from City Attorney Costanzo. What's this all about?
December 31st.
I guess, yeah, we need a motion first before we berate him.
With reluctance, but move for receipt with reluctance.
Support.
We have a motion supported. Did you hear make a speech yet, or is this
Well, I'm-
one of the city's
But I will
personal
say, and it's in the letter too, but, you know, there was obviously concern about how we were gonna proceed moving forward. And whether we could keep the business open where it is now, you know, downtown, that was a huge thing for me. And keeping Debbie working and, you know, Pam is gonna be fine. But we're gonna affiliate with a firm out of Saginaw, Smith Volco, and we chose them, or at least talk to them initially, because they do the same kind of work we do. They do municipal work, they do insurance defense work like I do. So they're trial attorneys that litigate, you know, get sued by Sam Bernstein or something, they hire somebody like me to defend it. And they do estate work and they do business transactions like Pam does too. And so they've committed to, like I say, to keeping the office open, and they would be available, as would Pam, you know, to continue to represent the city. And so that's certainly an option for you guys. And I would hope selfishly that, you know, you guys would consider that seriously. But it's been a privilege, honestly, to be city attorney for the city of Holland. It's meant a lot to me, and I really appreciated working with all of you folks, and hopefully, you know, continue to do that through the end of the year. But it's been a great experience.
When's it going away, buddy?
There is no one.
It's a New Year's Eve bash.
Am I-
It's a New Year's Eve.
I'll
To celebrate.
that's good.
But no, nothing.
I'll just say honestly, Tony, I don't think there was anybody that could have carried us through last summer, except for you.
It's very nice of you.
I mean that. I mean, the way that you interacted with the crowd, both for and against, and you were the right person to get us through what went on last year, and I appreciate, I'll never forget it. I
I
appreciate
really
that.
appreciate that too. I mean, it was a pleasure representing all of you because of the way we feel about the city of Alma too, and having the best interests of the city at heart. That, it was a privilege, honestly.
And if the commission's interested, we can invite representative over from Smith Volvo, that we can meet, if that's something you, I'll be interested in, to do that for the next meeting if you wish.
Yes, whatever the convenience items, we got until the summer.
Well, they were anxious to say hello at least, and, you know, so you guys could put a, you know, face to it, whatever.
That would be great. Any additional comments or questions? With our thanks, we'll entertain, or I guess all those in favor of receiving it reluctantly would be yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. So we have received that. Thank you, Tony. Hopefully a long and happy retirement for you.
That's the plan.
Good. Moving down to hearings, public hearing to consider a request from Wind Telephone Company, DBA Wind Telecom, for a bilateral Metro Act permit under the Metro Act provisions. Your pleasure. I guess we'll open the hearing. So, gonna move for that?
Yeah, I think.
Move to open, yes.
Support.
We have support. All those in favor be yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed is no. We have a hearing.
All right, yeah, this is basically procedural, under the Metro Act. Wind Telecoms currently holds a license for to use our right of way currently. They're asking for renewal of that particular license. This includes their overhead and underground, copper and fiber facilities, that run throughout the community. They provide, basic local exchange, long distance, and exchange access service lines throughout the community. That's what they're permitted for. This permit does not expand on their current system. They're not planning at this point to expand any lines. So that's the long and short of it. And if they do propose to do anything else, they have to come back to us and submit drawings and for any extensions.
Okay, who has the first question? It's just a renewal, so there's.
Yep, it's one of those things, it's kind of like, as long as they follow the rules of the Metro Act, we can't really say, we have much to say.
As far as we know, they are following the rules.
Yes, they are, yes, they are. Yes, they are.
I did look at the application too, and talked to Sarah about that, and actually she set me straight a little bit too, because, the question I had was the insurance coverage. The permit requires that they list Alma as a named insured, and I didn't see that initially in the policy, and that's one of the things I'm gonna check on with Sarah. She saw it.
Yeah, it's
Another reason that my retirement is. As long as Sarah's here, I'm.
Attorney Sarah. Okay. So we'll entertain a motion to close. Or I guess public
I was gonna
comment.
say,
Does
do we
anybody
have
from
to
the
say-
public want to comment? Yeah. I can see the thinking there. So thank you.
But maybe not.
Any members of the public here to comment on the Metro Act? Okay. Hearing none, now we'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So,
Motion support, last chance for everybody. All those in favor say yes.
yes.
Any opposed would be no, and the hearing is closed. Next item is to set a public hearing for September 13th, 2022 at 6 PM or as soon thereafter as the agenda allows, to consider an application from Gemini Capital Management 5 LLC for a commercial rehabilitation exemption certificate for 111 West Superior Street.
Set the hearing.
You do, okay. Got a motion support, comments or questions? We've talked about this at least once before. So, hearing none, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Any opposed is no, and we have set a hearing, thank you. Number 3, set a public hearing for September 13, 2022 at 6 PM or as soon thereafter as the agenda allows, for a review of proposed ordinances which will amend the current fireworks and ORV ordinances, I assume that's off-road vehicle, ordinances to meet the state statutes, also for a review of proposed ordinance regulating the operation of golf carts on city streets and sidewalks. It's a pleasure to set the hearing. Motion support, any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed say no. The motion is carried and we set another hearing. Moving right down to the consent agenda, we need to consider a request for payment to VC3 Incorporated, which is formerly known as IT Right, in the amount of $29,960 for renewal of the annual service contract. Your pleasure.
Move approval.
Okay, motion support, any comments or questions?
Just a question, did your amount go up this year? Now that
It-
they've been bought out?
It went up a few $100s.
Okay,
Yeah,
ours went up substantially.
Oh, ours did not.
Ours was
They were like 6%.
Yeah, it was
That's good
something
then.
very small, yes.
Yeah, ours went up for a nonprofit, it was like, so, yeah, I was just curious.
It was a few $100s.
That's not bad, then. Very good.
And I presume at the same time, since there was a buyout, watch the service level, make sure you're still getting what you
Yes. Yep.
always have expected.
I believe they still have the same local team
Yes.
that'll be service, you know, so
Yeah.
it shouldn't change, but they are gone up national,
Yeah.
international,
When they go to that,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and
I
it's
know.
nothing,
I've had-
and nothing's
I've had
ever gonna
many
change during a after a mile,
I
right?
know.
Nothing's ever gonna change.
Yes.
Right up until the time when everything changes.
Exactly. I know, we've had so many conversations because of
Yeah.
our rate increase and,
That definitely was a selling point for IT Right, was they were local, they were smaller, the
Yes.
service level they targeted, we were their target customer. I mean, that was really nice to have a firm.
it is nice though that they did keep most of the same service technicians and stuff, I mean, so, for now,
Yeah.
familiar faces.
Yeah,
stuff,
and
so.
hopefully that'll continue and there'll be no harm, no foul, and everything will be great, so. Any other comments or questions? With that, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed say no, and the motion is carried and we, approved it. Moving down to request for purchase. First up is consideration of a resolution to approve a request for purchase to the FAAC Incorporated in the amount of $93,602.15 for a Milo Range Theater 180 multi-screen training simulator, together with related training items and equipment for the police department. Also to authorize the public safety director to execute the sales agreement on behalf of the city. Your pleasure.
Move approval.
Support.
Motion support, and then, there's a background, but you want to just cover it for us here?
Sure. Yep, a few, 3 months ago, I believe it was, we let the commission know that we did receive a grant for training in the first responders, recruitment and training of first responders. Part of that application was for a simulator type piece of equipment like this. As you can see, our grant request and the amount that we did receive was $87,925. The request for purchase is for $93,602. But we have subsequently submitted another application from the family to cover the rest of that cost. So, knock on wood, which they've always been very good to us, will cover that remaining $6,095 that we have. The theater itself will be located at the Elma High School in a secure room there. The reason they're there, one, they have the room for it. Two, it's gonna be used not just for our purposes here, it will be used for the vocational ed criminal justice program that runs through the school district. That one of our former officers, a part-time officer for us now, actually teaches. This will also be available to our area, other law enforcement and such to be used for that. What's nice about it is it does help with obviously the active shooter type stuff, but it also provides some training for domestic de-escalation type training for our officers, so they're not seeing something for the first time. They can get a little bit of upfront interaction with it before going on site with something real that happens. So it sounds like it'd be a very good tool for us now and I think going into the future with everything that goes on in the society. So,
Questions?
I would just say it sounds like great collaborations and kudos to whoever wrote this.
Kendra Overlook did
Nice.
wrote the grant for us, and like I said, when we mentioned way back 3 months ago, there was $5 million available, $30 million in requests, and we were lucky enough to get some of that. Yes.
And what was the agency that granted this?
This is the
This came from
let me
Homeland
get
Security or
my,
something?
this is through the, get on my page here. State of Michigan's First Responder Training Recruitment Grant. The department we're working through now for the funding is through the Department of Treasury.
No, go ahead.
We have additional, as things come up, and we get additional programs, expand what we can between the simulations.
And hopefully they'll never need it.
Yes.
Although the de-escalation portion, I'm very excited about that. We were talking a lot about that all the time, with the police force and whatnot, and I know they need that, because they do a lot of domestic, hopefully they'll never have to encounter the shooters, so. But the domestic stuff is certainly ongoing and prevalent in our community.
And it's just helpful to, just to get our folks out there involved in it, and just having an opportunity, like it says in the literature for it, to give them time to say how you would normally react, and then learn better tactics and best practices for right, yes, and everybody
Everybody
included.
Yeah, well, they're all gonna benefit from that one way or another.
Yes.
Okay, anything else? With that, all those in favor would be yes?
Yes.
Any opposed is no, motion is carried. You have agreed. Second up is consideration of a resolution to approve a request for the purchase to Total Energy Systems LLC for a 5-year planned maintenance agreement for the generator maintenance at the wastewater treatment plant for a contract total of $16,025 and to authorize signatures on the agreement as necessary.
Support.
Okay, any comments, questions?
Just,
Sarah?
like we spoke about, we approved a generator contract for the lift stations, throughout the community for the wastewater treatment plant. This one is for the actual treatment plant itself. Obviously, that stuff can't go down, so, this is a budget item that we have in there, and it's a fixed price for this amount. And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, is this, what was included when it comes to like we need to replace a part, that sort of thing?
Yeah,
Sorry to bring you
no,
up,
it's
Dave.
fine, it's fine. What they do is an annual, maintenance check on it, if there's any parts that need to be fixed or anything like that, we take care of that. Small items, large items would be different. So you have your maintenance agreement check, we'll, check it annually, also load testing, what we do is check, push it to its, recommended size or rating. Run it for a designated amount of time, see if anything breaks on it then, because a lot of times you don't know this until they kick on. Unfortunately, usually there's an issue, probably 2 out of 5 times the generators kick on, there is some type of an issue. This one, we also went, we were able to go joint with the Gallo plant for that generator, so we got a little bit of a discount for this one and the Gallo one for going jointly. So they're gonna have an agreement with the Gallo water treatment plant generator as well. Wanted to wait till Gallo approved theirs, then bring it to this board to make sure that if there's any issues that the Gallo board had, so we did get a discount for the ability to.
We, same firm we contract with for the other generators?
No, we're not able to use a different generator brands, so they're not able to maintain those other types, but this one they can go with the one for Gallo.
This is the same as Gallo.
Yes.
Is this one, we talk about this one not being big enough? The generator's too small for a plant, or
No, there's no
this
issues
one's
there.
sized correctly, or
Yes.
good? Okay, I thought there was one we were talking about that we had to replace or we had to upsize.
No, we were looking at getting an additional one to move over for the lift stations. We're considering that for the wastewater plant, but we don't have one that's undersized.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have questions? Okay, with that, all those in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed would be no. Motion's carried, thank you. Next up, recommendation on bids. Consideration of a resolution to receive bids and award transportation needs study and service plan to recommended bidder MP2 Planning LLC for a total of $64,805. The following bids were received on August 1st, 2022. And there are 6 of them ranging from $51,780 up to 64,950. Or 64,698, I guess is the highest one. Nope, 64,805 is the next one, right? Okay, one of them anyway, so there's a lot of them there. Recommended bidder anyway is the MP2 Planning LLC. All your pleasure.
Move to approve.
Support.
Okay, we have motion support.
As we discussed a few months ago, we did, receive a grant for, transportation study, of our current system. How is, the MDOT, since we've done the expansion there, they would like to know how, that's working out for us with the current staffing level and the equipment that we have there. Also, along with that, we've talked about multiple times about the possibility of expansion beyond where we're currently at and possibly even at the countywide level. MDOT would like to see a countywide transit system since we're the only one on the 127 corridor that's not a county transit authority at this point. So as part of that, they felt that it was worthwhile for them to fund a study for us. So the amount that's being requested, and all the bids did fall within the grant amount. The grant amount MDOT provided was for up to $65,000. So all of them do fall within there. the main, I guess not selling point, but the point that, was the biggest for me, when, M2, MPT planning, put theirs together for us, and we went through them, was under the method approach that, is in, column five, that they are providing up to, 10,000 surveys, mail surveys, within the service area, as opposed to just doing stuff online and by internet. A lot of the folks who use public transportation don't have access to necessarily phones or the internet itself to take the surveys. So that was a big hop. Also, they had also included in their price some visits to coming to the facility here too. So that was also a benefit in my mind for this. Ultimately, I know we discussed this time and time again. We just got into working with Ithaca, Pine River, and St. Louis, providing normal service. This hopefully will help us gauge interest from other municipalities, be it villages or townships that would be interested in public transportation. I would hope that other municipalities would look at that as if they want to join, not that we're looking for people to join, that they would like to join for their constituents. This comes out, they can take this as a third party justification if it does come back saying that that their citizens would like to have services in their jurisdiction. And if it did come back and say that a particular township didn't want it, that we had that information too, that we could provide to them. So it's not us coming up with the information saying, if you should join, it's good for you. This is a third party that MDOT is paying for, and that they're behind their methodology too, because they're the ones that provided us the RFP to send out for these bids. That's my piece on it.
Okay. Where's the first question? I guess, for me, I look at this $64,000 is an awful lot of money. I mean, granted, the state's paying for it, but I turn around and look at rural estate. I mean, it's all our money at the end of the day. And I am bothered by the fact that I know a number of our neighboring townships and have expressed frustration at the end of the various times that, Elma's trying to push transportation into the townships, into the rest of the county, and they don't want it. I am not aware of any township or other county commissioners even coming to us saying they want to look at this again. It's been part of our countywide master plan for a number of years. We're about to enter another strategic planning for countywide master plan, I believe. It seems like we could gauge some interest through that process without spending $64,000, if that's the question you need answered. Or, if we need an efficiency study, to figure out how to run our system more efficiently, is this really the best tool for that? Forgive me, but I'm highly suspect when it's run by a bunch of former MDOT officials, coming in as consultants. I just struggle with that a little bit personally. If it's a retirement plan for MDOT officials, I just gotta question that, but, I'm not sure the value's there for $64,000. It's kind of what I'm struggling with here. I'm not sure that it's not gonna hurt us with our neighbors who may perceive this, even though it's an MDOT thing, we can say it is. I have a feeling it's gonna be perceived as Elma trying to force transportation, the cost of transportation onto the remainder of the county. That's just my 2 cents.
I won't say that this justifies the cost or whatever, that this would be a big enough constituent, but I will say that and certainly the majority of people that go down to public schools live in our school district, but I regularly have people that are just over the end of public schools, or in Westerberg, various places that we don't offer, and they're struggling to find transportation for their kids because they work and don't have a way to get them picked up without losing their job. So I'm not saying that's a huge percentage, but I will say that I do
And
But
I'm
if
not,
your
I'm not
families-
saying there's that.
No, I'm not
should be
saying
no-
you're not, I'm just saying
Yeah.
that, when you're saying that others may see it as us trying to push, my people that talk to me are wishing we would push it out, so I'm just offering it different.
And that would be the clientele we see as well, that it's the same situation, they're just over one way or the other and have a very difficult time getting to our agency for services, baby pantry, you know, for different things that are going on. And we hear, when you said there's people that do not want it, that's shocking me, because I'm hearing quite the opposite, that I've never heard.
Let me say, I think there's people that don't wanna pay for it, they don't want. They're not opposed to the service, what they're opposed to is paying for it is the problem. And that's why, you know, if that's, need is great out there, I guess those people should be talking to their elected officials, who in turn, I would like to see, I would prefer to have them come to us. Because I'm hearing just the opposite from those elected officials, they just, Elma's trying to run everything and trying to shove this down their throats. And I don't know, it doesn't say it could be perceived that way. But can be harmful in terms of cooperation around the county.
No, in staff's point of view, I agree completely with you in the standpoint of having those municipalities come to us and want to be a part of it as opposed to, and I would hope that if you had something like this, you give it to their elected officials and let their elected officials come back to it and say, hey, yeah, this makes sense, we've talked to our people, because it is on their responsibility to reach out to their folks and work with them, and we're here to help if they'd like to be a part of it. I mean, like right now, we have an agreement between the other municipalities. What's to say that you don't kind of expand that way as opposed to a county-wide situation you have? Arcadia is not involved. I'm not saying they are going to be involved, I'm saying that if they decided that that was something beneficial to their neighbor, to their constituents, that they would reach out to us and work with us.
Yeah, it's just, again, I'm not opposed to it, I'm not opposed to expanding the service, if that would be the best, I mean, if it's more efficient, I think, you know, initially, working with Slipper, St. Louis Ithaca, and Pine River Township, you know, to have the expanded service to those folks that need it out there, and, you know, initially, we were told there were going to be some economies of scale, and I still hope there will be before we're done here, as far as expanding it, as far as we have. But if those other communities aren't reaching out to us, if their elected officials aren't telling us that they want to bring these services to their constituents, I don't know how we're gonna make it happen anyway. They're gonna fight it at the end. And if, you know, if we can't maybe get a sense of that through the countywide master planning process, you know, it's like it's $64,000 wasted. Again, it's just my opinion. You know, having a study and say that people want it, I think it's pretty well determined. I think, however, wasn't there a community coalition or something that did a study a few years ago that really highlighted the need for the services, but it was not embraced by those entities, the other townships?
Oh, I don't know about that, but the collaborative council, I mean, I've been a part of that for 15 years now, and transportation's been their number one issue that they've been working on for 15 years. It's slowed down a little bit now that we do have a little bit more of an expanded service, but the hospital is involved in that, Community Mental Health, all the agencies, all the nonprofits in the community, schools, and I don't know about anybody saying they don't embrace it. It's always been, we need to expand transportation. It's always been the thought.
But there's been no movement from those communities.
Well, I mean, we're a group of nonprofits, and, I mean, you know.
No, I mean,
we've done a lot.
I know the
15 years
nonprofits.
As a group that,
Yes.
as far as talking about, you know, a lot of my clientele probably doesn't have any clue who their elected officials are. To be able to have that resource to reach out and say, you know, I don't have transportation, I don't own a vehicle, I don't have gas in me, I need public transportation, it's just not going to be in their wheelhouse to reach out likely to an elected official. You know, I don't, and I'm not putting down, I'm not saying that in a way, it's just, they have a lot going on, there's a lot that's happening in
The
their life.
hierarchy of needs.
It's just sometimes keeping your head above water, to be able to say, I'm gonna take a minute and contact my elected official to tell them I can't get my kid to school.
And you don't
You
mean
know,
it in a
it's-
derogatory way, it's just,
No,
it's not
definitely.
part of their
No,
daily.
it's survival, I mean, right now, a lot of it's just survival, so, I mean, so I think they're the elected officials are likely not going to always hear, that need. And
But they did see the results of those studies, I'm sure of it. I mean, we got them here, it was part of the countywide
Could be,
master planning
I'm not
process, I believe.
Yeah, I can't speak on that. I mean, I'm only a member, so I'm not running the show, but, so I'm not sure who saw the results in that, but.
Does, what happens to the results? I mean, because you've got, what I'm hearing is you've got a disconnect between what would be end users or people that have a need and the political mechanisms that are put in place to make it happen. So does the study, is it being shared, is it shared with us? The other thing, this conversation with Greg, if PennDOT is saying, you know, we'd really like to see all the counties have a countywide kind of transportation. Survey is one thing, they're probably better off with cash incentives and other policy kinds of things that encourage that to happen. Is PennDOT prepared to do that? Because that to me is probably gonna be every bit as effective as telling them. We change our elected officials every couple of years, walk in the door with information. We have, I think, a group of users who, for economic reasons and time reasons, don't necessarily connect or feel empowered to do it. Honestly, the way for PennDOT to look at this is, okay, what, if you want people to do it, what incentives? Because we probably can't do that on our own. So there's the efficiency part, but there's also, if you really, you've got to bridge that gap somehow. And I do think that part of it may be the survey that tells us something we may know already, but the need is there, no activity. Where do we work MDOT to help with incentives? That's what it needs to happen.
Would it be possible, I mean, you know, I believe there's a need, we recognize that. The need is out there in the county and in other areas, and I think we're serving a great need in our own municipalities here. Would there be a way to reach out to some of these other townships and even the county board to see if they would endorse, support us going forward with this study? So that they would then have some skin in the game when the results come back and say, well, we wanted to at least find out the information. But if they're totally shut down, if they're got blinders on and their earmuffs are over their ears and they're not gonna hear any of it, which is, I think, the information was pretty clear last time when this coalition group did the study. I think the need was identified then, and that's maybe what I was conflating with doing the study in the past. But I remember seeing some information about the need in the county. I don't doubt that. What I doubt is our ability to entice anybody else to join us. And for us to just go out and have another study that says, yeah, there's a need there, but so what? Nobody cares, the other entities don't wanna join us, we can't force them. We have no authority to do that. I would like to see them buy in early in the process, which would be, to me, now at this point, buy into the process of getting the data. And then once the data comes back, they have some ownership in the whole decision as well. They're already bought into the concept at least. Or at least we'd know, if they're not interested and they say, well, we're not gonna endorse your study because we don't want this, then we'd know that going in as well.
If I can, I can give you a little bit of background in my opinion. When I took over for transit, Matt Schooley, who was a former transit director, was already providing service to Pine River and St. Louis, a small portion. So, after I took over, I was looking at the contracts that we had with those municipalities, and there was a disparaging amount of, what they were paying for service. And so, that kind of led us down that path. It was me knocking on their door saying, this isn't right, so if you wanna, so they didn't come asking for it, it was more or less, if you wanna continue service, this is what needs to happen. And obviously I have some contacts in Ithaca, and so, Ithaca became a part of that as well. As far as the transportation study, we're just
just trying to get information. If you gather information to be able to make those informed decisions, I don't think by asking questions that you're trying to pressure somebody to either take part in or not. It's just the ability to gather the information to make an informed decision of whether this needs to grow any bigger or not. It's nothing more than that. And the price, it is expensive. It is, but I know that they have 4 different people that will be working on this for a period of 6 months.
And I wanted to-
And it's completely paid for through MDOT, who wants the study. I asked today, I said, why was this approved? Because we want you to do this. I didn't even know about this money that was available until the project manager said, you guys really need this, you just expanded your service area. And these people can come in and dissect and tell you if you're doing some things that could be more efficient.
So do
Like,
they
that'd be
help you try to get funding and support from the other?
Absolutely.
They do, that's
Yeah.
part of the,
Yeah, it's all a part of this survey. So, I mean, it's pretty encompassing, and I obviously, I want and need this survey. And
but to touch on Greg's point, that we can get the survey, but if we don't know how to get them, the other government entities involved, you're saying that part of the package
Well,
of this is to encourage.
well, this will at least give ourselves and any municipality that's interested, the information of whether their voter base would be willing to pay for it or not. I mean, if there's nobody that's willing to pay for the service, then why?
Well, I think regularly people aren't willing to pay for it, and it's usually not the people that need it that are,
Well,
able to pay, so
surprisingly
I-
enough, the transportation millage is passed at about a 70% rate. And, Gratiot County is a rural county. I get calls daily, from Breckenridge, Riverdale, Elm Hall. I mean, people just outside of Pine
Right.
River Township that are like, please come pick up my kids, or please come.
no, I know, I
Yeah.
talked to them, I agree.
I know, I do, and it's heart wrenching to tell somebody, I'm sorry, you live on the wrong side of the road, we can't come pick you
Right.
up, because you don't pay, a portion of this millage.
Would it
That's
be,
just-
would it be a problem to reach out to the villages and townships and cities
See,
that are not
I-
serving them, just to
absolutely.
say, we got funding, we're gonna do this, and if you'd like, I'd share the results with you when we're done, and it doesn't have to be we're pushy, it could just be we're throwing, MDOT's paying for it, we're throwing it out there, and could we share the results when it comes back with you, and do what you
Absolutely.
want
I'd be more
with
than
it,
willing
you
to
know?
do that.
yeah,
Sure.
just as a kind of a check the box, and great to know you're doing that, and, kind of a good neighbor gesture.
On the RFP, we had 90 days to make a decision, and we opened on, Sarah, was it the 1st of August 1st? So, I mean, at the next meeting, I think we'll be outside of our purview. So, I mean, a decision will need to be made tonight, otherwise we'll have to start over from scratch.
90 days or 30 days?
He said 30 days.
Nice.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, I'm having a brain fart
Oh.
right now. I knew that decision would have to be made tonight, that's why I didn't push this off for another meeting.
I thought you said we had one more.
It's 45 days.
One more week or one more month? I'm getting
One more meeting.
confused.
It was my understanding we had another meeting in between.
90 days, 30 days?
Yeah, I think by the time the next meeting comes through, we'd be just outside, I think we'd miss it by 4 days.
Okay, so it's a 30-day window. If it opened August 1st.
I just.
The interesting thing is, you
I don't know what
I
that
don't
is.
know.
got that extra week. this
45.
month.
Because we have a three week.
Yes, we do have a longer. You want an answer tonight, is what you're saying.
Well, if not, then, I mean, I either just put it in the can and don't open it again, or it's a whole bunch of work to ask these folks to, I mean, these proposals are, there's a lot to them. I mean, these companies have put a lot of time, and I'd like to be able to give them an answer one way or another. So, I do appreciate your time. Any other questions for me?
Would it be possible, Brett, if we just reached out to them and said, hey, we had some deliberations tonight with our commission, our next meeting is September 13th. Would you be would you, talk to each one, would you be open to keeping your proposal where it's at until that time?
Always ask, yes.
I mean,
The only problem with it is if they say no, we're done.
well, my experience, a lot of them will say, as long as, we were having deliberations on it, I think most of them would understand that. I think, I don't know, I have not talked
Are
to
you talking
individuals
about MDOT?
personally.
Are you asking about MDOT's keeping it open?
No,
Oh, the
consultants.
Oh,
the
but you have
consultants.
to let MDOT know, or?
No,
Oh.
when I put the
Gotcha.
request for proposals
Gotcha.
out, I said
Yeah,
that we would have an
okay.
answer within, I think it was 45.
One of these times I'm gonna catch up on what's going
No,
on.
I apologize, I might have asked. I apologize.
I thought we had to let MDOT know in 30 days, that's why I was getting
No,
all goofy.
I thought they were talking about MDOT.
So the shelf life
I'm
of the
sorry.
proposal is
No,
sorry for the-
45 days.
45 days.
Do I hear 50? So it's 45 days, is that right? Somebody said that.
I think it's 45
So
days.
45 puts us within 4 days, if you said, if we're having deliberations, can you just extend it maybe 5 days?
Absolutely, if you guys need more time or more information, I'd be happy to provide
It'd
whatever.
be nice to come back and just know what people.
The only risk though, folks, on that, right, I mean, is that it will not expire, that they say no, you're done, right? I mean, that's, it's the time I'm on.
I personally don't feel like I need more time,
Yeah,
but it's
To
up to
me,
you guys.
it's kind of unnecessary risk for
Yeah,
a grant,
yeah.
for the 65 or 64.
I mean, if we would have asked them before this meeting, then that would have been a different story, but if you're gonna wait till after this meeting to ask, you're doing it at your peril. If they say no,
I just don't see any harm in it. I don't think sending out a postcard or a survey there's no harm in, I just don't see any harm in it, so.
I think as a general practice, we probably need to get in the habit of not bringing proposals the last meeting, where if we do push it back, we lose the ability to make that decision. Obviously, this is a situation where it's a grant, so luckily it's not out of our pockets, but in a situation where it would be, I don't want to speak for the commission, but I would be upset if I didn't have the ability to at least dive into it a little bit more, or push things back, or ask, have the ability to ask Tony or whoever certain questions. I don't think I think it's an unnecessary risk to push it back, knowing that we don't have another meeting.
Anybody else have questions or comments? Hearing none, I believe we have a motion on the table, so all those in favor would be a yes.
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 Any opposed would be no. Any please? So it looks like the motion is carried. Next up would be consideration of a resolution to receive bids and award the annual sidewalk construction project for 2022 to the recommended bidder, who is J&J Concrete, for a total bid amount of $45,923. And we received, it looks like, 4 different bids, ranging from 45 all the way up to 67,879. So, your pleasure.
Move to approve.
and that's J and N.
J&N, I'm sorry, did I say
You said J and J.
J&J? Probably support. J&J is more common, it's in my mind anyway, think of the baby powder people. Okay, we have motion support, comments or questions, any background from staff?
Yeah, obviously, this is our yearly sidewalk replacement. The section that, we're focusing on, this year, is East Downey Street, from Pine Avenue to North State Street. And it will include the half block of North State and Woodward Street, heading south, and Gratiot Avenue heading south. This proposed area includes 15 different parcels, and to our sidewalk replacement policy, 50% of the cost is the city, 50% cost is the property owner. Everything is up this year. Concrete costs were up $3 per square foot from last year's. Our estimated budget for the project was $40,000. Obviously, the low bid is $45,923. So, depending on what the final contract and construction costs come in at, we're gonna have to come back to the city commission with a budget amendment for the difference in the contracted price.
Okay, this is a known contractor we used them for?
Yes.
We have. I guess anybody else have questions or comments? Is the footprint of this project considerably less than other years?
It's starting to shrink.
The geographic area?
Because because of the spending power, typically we budget 40,000 for that annually. And just mentioned that spending power due to inflation is starting to shrink. This year was one of the more dramatic reductions in it. So that's gonna be the question, do we budget more for it in the future? Or how does that wanna work? Or do we combine 2 years together, do it every other year? There's a few different options, but business practice. So to speak.
It's all 4-inch cores.
No, 4 and 6, summer drivers.
So how do they calculate that with the square footage then?
Yeah, those are bid out separately, they're 4-inch cost, 6-inch cost, a removal cost, a restoration cost. Yes, those are the prices they include.
No aprons, so this is strictly
I
sidewalk.
don't know, no drive approaches, this is sidewalks proper and sidewalks that are in drive approaches. If there is some of the drive approach that is busted out or was a part of it, that'll be replaced as an ancillary. Typically, that's not.
Other questions or comments? I think we have a motion, right? So all those in favor be yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed is no. Motion is carried. Resolutions. First up is consideration of a resolution to approve a bilateral Metro Act permit under Metro Act provisions for Wind Telephone Company, DBA Wind Telecom. Sounds familiar.
Move to
Your
adopt.
pleasure.
Move to adopt.
Have motion support. Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. The motion is carried. Next up, consideration of a resolution proclaiming Monday, October 31st as Halloween in the city of Alma and setting the trick or treat hours between 5:30 and 7:30 PM for that day.
Move to adopt.
Support. Motion support. Comments or questions? All
Can you
familiar with the
remind me,
concept?
can you
Pardon?
remind, because people ask me all the time, is it just Sundays that we move? How, I mean,
Traditionally, if Halloween does fall on Sunday, we've moved it.
one way or the other?
Yeah,
Okay, it's just, okay, because people, this is fine, it's on Monday,
It's on Monday.
and school's closed on Tuesday, so it's
Yeah.
fine. But I knew that there was something where it was different, but, okay, thank you.
And in the past, I think St. Louis at least has joined us, and you know, they're doing the same thing too. or-
Last year it was countywide, we were all on the exact same page.
Everybody was?
Yeah,
I know.
It was nice. but-
Yeah, it is nice when we're all on the same page.
Since it does fall on a Monday, we're all gonna do it on Halloween.
Not that we
Yeah.
prevent what they do, but.
Yeah, and there was an effort a couple of years ago to try to do it on the same day.
And I agree with, I think, maybe your point was, it'd be nice if this was just on Saturday night.
Well, sure,
For the kids.
yeah, but I knew there was one
Sleep off the
day,
sugar on Sunday.
sometimes, every few years that it was different, but so I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Anybody else? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no? We have Halloween scheduled. Congratulations and thank you. Number 3, consideration of a resolution to approve a second amendment to resolution 2022-0084 MDOT annual performance resolution amending the 2022 banners and street closures table to include a closure on September 23rd, 2022 for the Alma High School homecoming parade. That was a struggle for me.
Move to adopt.
Pleasure.
Support.
Thank you. Do we have support?
I did, yeah.
Got there, okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is passed, we have a parade, yay. Next up, consideration of a resolution to temporarily close the 100 to 300 blocks of Superior Street and 300 block of North State Street for the Alma Alive Celebration event on Saturday, September 10th, 2022. Pleasure.
Move to adopt.
Support.
We have motion support, comments or questions?
Pedestrians.
That's a good question, I think it's both, but
Yeah, it takes you from Pine Avenue to State Street, to the east side of State Street, and down from Superior to Center Street. Also part of this is, we have a Michigan Cornhole Association coming in the cornhole tournament. We have balloon cans coming down for the big part of the evening. So this will also include available for people to carry open, well, Adult beverages. I'm trying to, the actual terminology is.
Not for guns.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure you can stop
Yeah,
that.
well, no, but you know.
Yeah.
Bank
That will allow for that in this designated area, for that evening, for those hours of the celebration.
I think the dueling pianos is pretty cool.
I hope it's different enough that people, see that and come on down.
Yeah, I think it's a
We're
good.
doing that literally. too.
Yes, it will be much more than maybe it's outside.
Like really nice.
And you never know. So-
Yeah. The only question I have would be, you know, starting at Pine Street, oftentimes when we do this, there's nothing going on in that first and sometimes even the second block. Are we going to have enough activities to warrant closing at least that first block between Pine and Gratiot, I think it is?
Yeah, from the map I have, yes, but, well, as we get closer to it, I can verify, but right now, we have the cornhole, tournament. We have the, putter putt golf that was there last year. We have the stage for the main stage, then we have a smaller stage for, like coffee house act type things. And then we have the farmer's market vendors in a section of it too. So right now, they have everything placed and they have some bounces and stuff on State Street. So everything placed that I've seen, the space is covered. But if it's not, then I get, we can shrink it, but
And if you've not ever been to one of those cornhole tournaments, I mean, they spread them way, you know, because it's a board against board all the way down. It's kind of cool. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
that's probably,
I've got it in my backyard.
well, yeah, but I mean, to see the tournaments in action,
Yeah,
it's,
I haven't seen one in
yeah,
person, I've
it's
seen them
pretty-
in videos.
it's very lively.
Very lively.
But yeah, they,
Are you some kind of a reigning champion?
yeah, I just
We need to know
watched.
about this?
I
Are
mean,
you
I
a ringer
but
for
I've
this?
just watched. No, you know, professional experience.
I haven't heard from you enough, just to help answer your question, Greg, if you're concerned with closure at Pine and Superior, I'd like to close that at Pine for the commercial traffic, for the state trunk line to turn the trucks down Center Street to get them around, it's got a better turning radius than if you bring it tighter to that area. So that's why we traditionally ask to go back to that intersection there to take any truck traffic. We can hard close it there legally with MDOT, but we could have it to where locals can still get around, but we want to deter that truck traffic.
so we could do a sign basically says local traffic,
No trucks.
no through traffic.
We have business route 127 closed, is what we legally have to go on a barricade and then.
It sounds like we have enough going on.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully there's enough
Hopefully there's-
activity,
yeah.
it's worthwhile.
That's a technical answer, so sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dave.
Oh, and I get it, but a lot of these events are already planned, so they don't show up, you don't have enough people to, enough activity is covered, the last minute, it's not. I just had to express that concern, it's been expressed to me at different, further reaches of either side of that, or
Yep, and then,
sometimes it goes off State Street and there's nothing there, we don't have enough activities to put around the corner or whatever, it's the same thing, so.
and that's why we have pushed it further than State Street,
Mhm.
because we ran into that. Church of God will be having their day of activities too in their parking lot that day, so hopefully that does bring some parking and stuff within that block. So it looks a little fuller and stuff like that too, so there's gonna be a lot happening that day. Like Big Duck starts
It's
at
nice
10
with kids running around too, and not having to worry about. car-
Remind you that's
having-
also looking at that.
Yeah, yeah. it's-
Starts at 10.
And Lucky the Duck is going to be held over here?
Library.
Library? Good to know. Okay, I think anybody else have questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed say no? Motion is carried. Agreements, consideration of a resolution to authorize the execution of a project authorization for the fiscal year 2021, section 5339 buses and bus facilities competitive program with the Michigan Department of Transportation, notation number 2022-0005/P2 regarding funding for architectural and design engineering for transit proposed storage and maintenance facility, and to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the city of Elma.
Say what?
Well, consideration of a resolution authorizing.
Support.
Okay, we have motion support. Comments or questions?
This is the grant we received, in total amount of 3.5 million, 3.5 million, and obviously before you start building things, you gotta have design work done, so this is the execution of paying for the design work of that project.
Any comments or questions?
Is it FY 2021, is that correct? Project authorization for the FY 2021, the date correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds like that's when the grant process
Yeah,
started again.
yeah.
That's it. Anything else? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no? The motion is carried, thank you. Next up, reports of officers, boards, and committees. The city commission may receive the following reports by one resolution, or any commissioner may remove any item within the section for individual discussion and vote. Then we have reports from the Alma Transit Center, the Finance Department, and the City Manager's report.
And this is where I should have amended the agenda to add water authority report, which I didn't, and so my apologies, so.
I think technically we probably have to go under new business then,
Okay.
do we?
Sure,
Okay,
and
proper-
could you, after the meeting, ask the water authority to add in there, since I don't remember, and I will either have a report or no report, but, because I forget every single.
Fair enough.
I'm sure we.
So, okay, so under
I
new
apologize,
business,
Rex,
I
we- I think we
that's
talked
okay.
about
We
that.
have, but, and then I blink out, and then I blinked out during the agenda, and so here we are.
I mean, it is the first day of school.
We're
We're just glad you're here.
Yes, yes, thank
You
you.
know, kind of surprised too, I guess.
Yeah, and I was even early. Really,
Yeah.
note that?
That's true.
It's a star.
It doesn't happen often, which is why I wanted it noted, thank you.
You get a motion?
No.
No, because I didn't.
Anything, or-
Eric, do you want your poll?
Yeah, we, pulled both mine and finance. Give an update on that.
So we'll move to receive the transit.
Okay, support. Motion support, comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed say no. We have received the report. Next, we'll entertain a motion to receive the finance and city manager's reports.
Together or
Verbally,
separate?
I guess, can we do it together? Presume we can. Sure, okay. This is a weird way we do this. Sometimes it doesn't feel natural, so.
Well, especially if you're gonna be having.
I'm gonna recur us to talk about finance.
Okay. So I think first we need a motion.
So moved.
Support.
And support, okay. So, Mr. Dancer.
And, just as Chris comes up, we've been talking, chatting a little bit about the most, productive way, to, talk about our information and, make sure it's provided to the public and transparent and all of us hearing, same information. Where we're gonna, do the finance reports, meeting as a finance committee, we'll have our reports, the smaller ones, and then we'll have a quarterly, report also, and we'll just talk about them, as a report in front of the camera, and can answer questions and go about it that way. I think that might be helpful for everybody to stay up to speed on things.
And that was a comment that you made some meetings ago, that you felt like you were getting enough information. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought that the committees may not be working as well as we hoped, and if we move some of them back into just meeting, doing the work to the full board to keep everybody on the same page is probably a wise move, so thank you for that.
I wouldn't have made that comment though if I knew he was gonna wear a shirt like that.
What's wrong with his shirt?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
go green.
Okay.
Yeah,
We're good.
It's almost
Well,
football season.
Curtis?
Just
Not-
some unrecognizable.
Not everybody can go to Central, you know.
I mean, I'm a big Michigan fan, so I don't know about that shirt. But we
I
were
figured if
both
that's the
together.
most controversial thing I talk about when I talk about finance, then
It's
I'm
all smoke and
right, so
mirrors.
I will
Why are you
take that.
distracted by
Motion
sports?
Right,
to
yeah.
censure?
I think
That's why he wore that.
Yeah,
shirt.
yeah, all you're doing is thinking about football season, then you're
Yeah.
not listening to what I'm having to
Can't
say,
hear
so
you,
that's.
yes.
So I'm just gonna kinda go a little bit brief tonight because honestly, probably the July 31st finances is probably the most boring finances because it's the first month of the year. If anybody's over budget at this point, we've got way bigger problems than that. So there isn't a ton to talk about from a finance, but I will touch on a couple of preliminary year-end balance things. But I did wanna start with the investment. I provided a cash and investment summary, balance summary, and I've been doing this for the last few months, and I just wanted to touch on the fact that we are finally starting to see interest rates coming around. For the last couple of years now, interest rates have been basically nothing. So our investments have been probably at close to a 30-year, 40-year low the last couple of years. We are finally starting to see some turnarounds in that. I think our
Michigan Class Pool account actually hit 2% for the first time since I've been here, last month. And we actually, kind of funny, July, not funny, but kind of nice to see, in July, we actually saw, almost as much investment return in July as we did all of fiscal year 2022. So, obviously the fiscal year 2022 numbers did not come in very good from an investment standpoint, but we are starting to see a turnaround and we are starting to do some more things because of that. If you remember back in April, we invested in a few CDs, and that was the first of the CDs that we've been doing in the last about 2 years. We're planning on going out to bid again at the end of this week to try to get a couple more now that rates have turned around, and maybe get a few more on a little bit longer scale now that try to lock in those rates in case we start for some of it, just in case we start seeing a turnaround. Seems almost our entire portfolio right now is at a year less in duration, so trying to get a little bit more risk diversity and product diversity. But it's been kind of challenging when Michigan Class has been coming in higher than most of our CDs, and Michigan Class is liquid to want to go to some of those different other products, but at the same time we do want to diversify and we do want to make sure that we are doing some different things. So we actually have a meeting set up for Thursday for the finance team to really go over, and finance team locally here, our management, to go over some of our options and where some of our balances are. We still do have a couple of accounts that we have money in that have 0% interest, just because of the nature of those accounts, and we have talked about trying to get out of those completely, or as much as possible, at least, because there's just really no point in them unless there is a point. Like, there's a couple of them that you have to have because of other products that we have. So some of them are avoidable but are not avoidable. But just trying to get some things moved around because I diversify a little bit more than what we have in years past. And now we're finally starting to get some returns. Really try to be a little more aggressive with our portfolio and try to see some of that interest come back to the city. That's a pretty low amount of time for what could be a potential gain, especially sitting with some of the money we have sitting there. So I just kind of wanted to touch base real quickly on that. And then as far as year-end balances, these are the year-end balance columns are obviously still preliminary. We're still working on closing out the books. We're getting pretty darn close though. Not really anything that has been a very big surprise to me so far as anything year-end numbers that are adjustments that have popped up that have really thrown numbers off what we anticipated. I don't want to speak too soon, but it does look like for the general fund, I know we talked about a couple months ago how we were looking at about a $500,000 deficit in the general fund this year. That number is not going to be as scary as what we originally projected, thanks to some of our budgets coming in under budget this year and some timing differences. I know one of the big things is we anticipated originally that the entire Parks Restroom project was going to be completed this year. Since that got kicked back to July and August now, some of the expenses that we thought were going to be incurred in last fiscal year will now move over to this fiscal year. So at some point we'll have a budget amendment to move that into this year. So that's not a savings overall, but it will make the last year numbers look a little bit better. But we did end up in the general fund coming in, so like I said, so far we still have preliminary numbers, still some adjustments. We did end up coming in under budget for what we projected expenses, even outside of the capital projects, by a little over 100,000 so far. So we won't see quite as big of a hit. It's still obviously going to be a deficit, but we knew that coming into it. But at least it won't be quite as scary as what we originally projected. So that made me feel better when we started looking at those numbers. Other than that, from the other funds, nothing really to me jumps out as anything quite out of the ordinary. Local street fund is going to be show a deficit in the current year, which again we budgeted for a deficit. We expected that. Part of that is just again the timing of projects. Over the last 2 years, we've built up a little bit of fund balance in there because we haven't been able to do as many projects. We did more projects last year than I think we've done in the last 3 or 4 years. So again, we had the fund balance. It was budgeted for. We were planning on it, but if we should see a decrease in that fund this year. DDA, same thing. We committed to spending a good portion of our DDA fund last year. The project's slowing down. Except for the study for the engineering for the parking lots. So there's going to be obviously the DDA is going to see a pretty significant decrease again because of a capital project that we committed to for the last year. And then again, not to sound like a broken record, but really the big fund that keeping an eye on right now continues to be the water fund. looking better, better than what I was projecting this year, but still looking as far as sustainability for that fund long-term and the ability to afford, some of the big capital projects that we have coming down the road is probably the one fund that I keep, we're keeping the closest eye on as far as making sure that we have a sustainable plan going forward. And I've been working with David and Aaron quite a bit on that too, as far as some of the capital planning and what some of our options are and stuff like that. So we are, the other thing that we are starting to do, and we're actually starting it this week, David and I are starting to meet, on a regular basis to really start building out, our capital improvement plans and, try to really get some better, understanding of even, I know we're required to do them for 5 years, but we're even looking further out than that and trying to back into things and really trying to run some more analysis of, it's obviously all guesses and projections, but of if we push a project off 3 years, what is that cost gonna be? As far as how much more is it gonna cost 3 years from now? And what are we gonna lose in efficiency by not doing something sooner, just so we can really try to analyze things on a, I think, a little bit higher level than what we have in the last couple of years, so that when we bring suggestions to the planning, goal setting session, if we start bringing these projects, we can really have some of those kind of more in-depth conversations about here are some of the cost benefits of doing one project maybe sooner than another, or by what projects maybe by kicking it off a couple of years aren't as impacted financially and stuff like that. And again, they're projections, but really trying to look at asset management and stuff in a little more high level or a higher analytical approach, as opposed to just, look, here's what we need and tell you guys this is the list of projects, what do you want kind of thing, but really be able to bring kind of a more analytical approach to it. So that's kind of some of the things we're doing on the finance side of things, and I'm open to any questions on any of the reports that are provided, but as I said, tonight's was more about just kind of doing a high level and, anything, when we start doing these more quarterly, more significant ones, if there's anything specific people wanna see, please let me know so that we provide them, we put them in the reports ahead of time so that we can have time to look at it before the meeting this month.
They want to thank you for trying the dashboards and see how that works. If you go back, you do the previous year, I went at the same time period, so I know if the police in October has spent 35% of their budget, has that last year. They spent. So it gives us the same duration. I mean, this is the first one. Right into it. It really helps us, and that's the concern.
For comparison.
Why is this off?
Clearly, as you can label them, you do that too, whether it's a period to date, or a certain month, or year to date, or complete year, whatever. As long as, if you can label those numbers so that we can, then we don't have to come back to you and ask you all of those questions. Yeah, I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I do appreciate taking the effort. That helps. Just start to compare this to the cost.
Anybody else, questions? I just, you talked a little bit about closing out the previous year and whatnot, and we've, everybody's aware, we've been struggling for a number of years now. Can you give us, our accounts reconciled for the previous year? We've got that down
We
now,
are
do we?
probably 95% over there, so
Okay.
we are very, I think with Mayor and I talked like 2 weeks ago, we said we're actually closer now than when the audit started last year, so yes, we are, part of that is because obviously we do a lot more things.
I hate to get so basic, but
Nope.
in prior years, some of your predecessors
Yep.
have not been able to do that, so.
Yeah, I'm aware.
I know it's basic, but it seems like a stupid question, so.
Nope, we are.
But I'm glad to hear that answer.
Yes, we
Yes.
are very, very, very close.
Anybody else, last chance? Okay, so I think the motion is for both reports, so we'll move on to the second one if nobody's got more questions
Yep,
for
just
Curtis.
just a couple things I want to bring up. First, just over the, you probably read the newspaper, the federal government, the state government have appropriated $2.3 million to phase 2 of the rail study from Ann Arbor to Traverse City. And if you remember, some of you around the commission at the time, we put $2 grand into the initial analysis for that to get a matching grant. And we're finally to the next stage of the planning side of it. But Groundwork, who is the nonprofit organization kind of working on this in the Traverse City area, they did provide some highlights that have been happening besides this new announcement. phase 2 of this planning portion. The transportation budget in the state of Michigan did provide $2.5 million in the Traverse City area for rail improvements for freight and the passenger line. MDOT was awarded $21 million of federal rail grant money to improve the tracks along the Ann Arbor portion, north of Ann Arbor, which would eventually head toward Traverse City for freight and passenger. And in July of this year, state lawmakers included $1 million in funding to kick off, which we just talked about, a federally required planning process, and now working to bring $150 million in additional funding for track repairs that will benefit the freight and rail between those communities, and we're along that rail system there. And then, of course, the $1.3 million that came from the federal government to get the study underway, and the funds will be coming through the Cadillac Wexford Transit Authority, working the groundwork to complete that study. Probably the big thing that we want to talk a little bit about tonight, you do have a draft copy of marijuana ordinance, recreational marijuana ordinance in your packet. Basically what we've working with Tony, what it's been drafted after is mainly the Edmore ordinance with pieces of the Clare and Breckenridge ordinances. The areas that the commission want to take a closer look at under section, here's my sections here. Under section 4, authorization of marijuana establishments in B. Under this section B, type of establishments. Since we did the medical marijuana ordinance, there's been a couple of other types of facilities that have been added to the law. We could just stay with the same ones we've had, or we could even look at removing a couple that we've had before in the past. Currently, what we have is the grow, process, retailer, which is the provisioning centers, safety compliance, and secure transport.
But these are separate though.
Yeah,
from the
these are separate.
medical.
These are separate from medical.
These would be additional. You need to decide if you're gonna have any, and if you are, how many you're gonna have of each. Obviously, that's,
We don't necessarily have to have.
you don't have to have, you don't have to have any, you can have one, you can have, whatever you decide, but obviously that's huge amount of discretion there. And obviously, it's one of the first things I think that need to be discussed.
What is the process for this? Does this go to the planning commission and then comes to us, or do we start throwing in
this-
ideas and thoughts?
This ordinance would be, you
Just
guys.
this level?
Yeah, I mean, and you set up public hearings or whatever,
Yeah.
it's up to you guys. But this is your call. And then it would go to, planning commission has to decide, as far as the special use for, the zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
That's really their domain, but this is on you folks.
So how do we work through then, like, if we have changes or questions or suggestions, or what's the process?
Frankly, I think, this is, I know there's some folks here that really wanna get rolling, but this is the early stage.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I did this and what I was hoping to do, and I sent the email out, there's a few things. Eric's touched on, I think, the most basic one, obviously, because that's the starter. Do you want these facilities, and if so, how many? But beyond that, the law says if you're gonna allow them, you have to set up a competitive process. They want, the city, the municipalities to pick the most qualified. So that's how this is supposed to work. So if you look, and I can't remember what section it is, but you're looking at all the factors that you're gonna consider. And so those factors, looks like section 8, and then section 9 is the license application evaluation. So the city is gonna take, the commission is gonna take all these things into consideration. That's not necessarily an exhaustive list. I mean, I've got 9 things there. And that's based on all the other ordinances we put together and, looking at other ones too. But what you wanna do there is provide this commission and any commission down the road that's gonna be looking at these applications, questions that are gonna tell you folks who's deserving and who isn't, and however you need to get there. So, that's, and I'm open to suggestions, but I think, like I said, I think you're 100% right about that. This is the beginning of this. We gotta kick it around and figure out what you want. The other thing is, some of the municipalities are saying, because the law says they wanna make this competitive, they want the municipalities to make a choice based on merit. But you can easily get in a situation where you've got, 2 or 3 competitive applications, and you throw up your hands and say, these are so close. I know Breckenridge has a lottery in that scenario, so that's another thing. Do you want that as a fallback, or don't you? That type of thing. And a lot of this, if you're going to allow these, a lot of this stuff is pretty much, these minimal operation standards, those things are almost set in stone. I don't know how much discretion there is there, you know what I mean? So it's really the idea of, what do you want, how much of it do you want, what are the criteria you're gonna use? And whether or not, like I say, you wanna fall back on lottery, as a fallback position. But I think, this is obvious, this is very important. This is not something that,
Well, I guess that's where I'm wondering, like, then how do we give our input? In what format, or what forum? Like, I have input as to the distance to a school. I have input in, the numbers. There's a lot of, I went through it, obviously, with fine tooth comb, and I have some suggestions, some things that we got from other cities that said, do this, don't do that, and
sure,
in what arena do I give those
I think
opinions or ideas?
This is the arena.
Tonight?
Well,
That's what I wanna know. What, are we gonna have a special work session for this? Are we
that might not
just
be a
keep doing
bad
this
idea.
every meeting?
Because,
No.
I certainly I would take any
I wanna
suggestions anybody has.
process.
But, work session or whatever, might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, I think probably everybody bring their comments and put them in a format that everybody can read ahead of time, so we can all digest one another's thoughts.
Yeah.
Have a special session.
That makes sense. Because this isn't something, I don't think anybody wants to, well, there are a few people, a couple people in the audience may know, that wanna hurry up.
Well,
And I
but
get
that
it.
would
I
expedite the
understand.
process too, rather than
But
coming
yeah,
here
but this
week
is a
after
serious
week.
thing.
And picking
Yeah.
one little thing.
What,
here
3
and
things
there.
you have tonight?
Yeah.
It's-
Absolutely, and the other issue, and it always happens, we're trying to, you're trying to, take care of any contingency, right? And the minute you do that, something pops up that you hadn't thought of. So, yeah, this is really good, and I think a work session would be very helpful as far as that goes. And then I can go back and, and take all these suggestions and recraft some of this, or whatever.
Should we be focusing on section 9, license application evaluation,
And section, whatever it is that lists how many and what kind and all that kind of stuff. 'Cause that should be the 2 that we are looking at, you think?
Well, I would look, obviously you want to look at the whole thing, but yeah, those are the ones, in my mind anyway, that it gives you the discretion, the most discretion, and that's, in my opinion, those are the things that are gonna, really make a difference. The other thing, obviously, is the question of the lottery too, as a fallback.
Mhm.
Is that still allowed?
In my
At one point,
opinion,
I heard some
well,
chatter that,
yeah,
because we did a lottery before, and.
well, no, the medical marijuana, the lottery was allowed,
Right,
there's no question.
but I heard it wasn't any longer.
Well, medical marijuana is still medical marijuana, that's just nobody wants it anymore, for various reasons. But for this, the statute that allows recreational adult use marijuana requires a competitive process. So if all you did was say, if you have a completed application and there's more than one, we're gonna go to a lottery, I agree, that's not gonna
Are
work.
there any prohibited criteria that we need to avoid? I guess that would be I'd like somebody that's gonna invest at least $2.5 million in something, right? So,
But
like we do that.
that's, one of the
And that
things,
should be a criteria? or-
well, no, you're not gonna set a minimum.
But
One of the
in
criteria
investment.
is, absolutely, yes. How's the community gonna benefit by what you?
The equity investment.
Yeah, and I think this gentleman here, they've been talking about that, how you're gonna get involved in the community and and what are the kinds of things you're gonna do, yeah, how are we gonna benefit? Right, that's legit.
I know we have this document from my office where they spoke to all the different cities and villages and stuff, and that was a thing that a lot of them said, you know, like, the way the building looked, I mean, they didn't want pole barns, they didn't want, you know.
Sure.
There was a
Absolutely.
certain look that they had to have to be in their community. Some of them, the ones that are in the middle of lawsuits are the lottery ones.
That's.
One
yeah.
was the minute that
Yeah,
the
that's
numbers were drawn, 3 lawsuits that next morning. I mean, so,
Yeah.
that seems to be when I
Yes.
read through these responses, that seems to be,
The last thing I think was, we lost you too.
You know, and I say otherwise, it doesn't retire.
Yeah.
No, yeah, you're 100% right. And the idea is to make this as airtight as you can to avoid this. I did hear, and I think it's from a pretty good source, and the pace of those suits has slowed down. And one of the reasons is because as more and more municipalities are getting involved in this, the number of these, especially the retail establishments, they're getting larger. So the take that each one is getting is not necessarily as great as it was, and there's not as much money out there to fund all of this stuff. Just, you know, you're paying your lawyers to file suit every time you turn around, that's an expensive proposition. And I'm not saying it's not gonna happen, but I think, as you see more and more municipalities starting to do this, it might lessen that lawsuit pressure.
the market is so
Like
saturated.
what it
I
is,
think we're seeing it
It's
already.
unreal.
they're everywhere.
These cities closing up, I mean, they've got them closing up.
Yeah,
It's just
consolidation
so
of the
saturated.
industry is-
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Gonna
so,
happen.
insane.
but this is important, these provisions are really important, I think. I mean, it's
I mean,
something-
with the provision being important, as you're talking about and working through some of the details that Audra has mentioned, is maybe the first step, a public sort of hearing to figure out yes or no. Because there's no point in figuring out A through Z if the answer is no, or A through Z and now the answer is yes. So you figure out yes or no, okay, now bring your experience, knowing it's gonna be a yes, because we voted on it, it is a yes. Can we do that in a way where we say yes, we're gonna work out the details in a future meeting?
Well, and if you remember, a couple meetings ago, I said kind of, we said,
Yeah.
I didn't wanna do the work if there wasn't at least a legitimate shot this thing was gonna pass. But yeah,
We can, to the point where I think a work session is great, Audra, but I just would hate to do the work session before we got a decision. Let's make a decision.
We've done that.
Via,
We voted for it too, and that's what,
and to have the discussion about it, which is what we're having now. But now I think there's a discussion on, okay, yes, it's gonna happen, or no, it's gonna happen.
that was the vote.
Well,
I
that's
understand.
what to
we
get
could do
going.
this, I think, and I, you know, obviously your choice. If you wanted to hold a public hearing to get public input, to see where people are on this, and even specifically, how many of these would you like, and what type of things would you like? If you wanted to do that first, you could. I mean, I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing.
But you can't say, yes, we're gonna do it until we have an ordinance to vote on, because that's
Right.
what's going to,
Right.
that's the make or break.
That's true.
True, I mean, you could also do a yes
can't
contingent
say
on the
yes.
ordinance. Contingent on the ordinance.
And that was,
But
my
it is-
understanding was that was what we took.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Well, the vote that was taken, I think, was to move forward with
Yes.
Right,
with the ordinance.
right.
That's, yeah.
But you can't vote, we're gonna allow it or not allow it, until
Right,
we know what we're
Right,
allowing. or not.
absolutely,
It's gotta
because
be
you,
that.
you need an ordinance, if you're gonna allow it, you better have an ordinance, because if you just allow it,
Yeah, that's.
then it's,
Yeah.
that's the wild,
Can't
wild
go
west.
for it. But by the same token, you know, I think the market is saturated, I don't think the demand is.
It's still, you know, I mean, I'll tell you what, all you have to do is go to the old Crossroads Bar, there's cars in that parking lot all the time, I mean, that's really something, I don't know how well they're doing, and maybe they got a lot of
Those
employees,
are all
and that's the only
Zach's
cars
cars.
there. What's
Those are
that?
all Zach's cars.
Just parks it out.
Sorry, Zach, sorry, Zach. Just kidding.
But I think like
That's
everything, there's a limited market for any product.
Yeah, and yeah, as more and more of these places, you know, are
Starting
starting
up all over the place, and then you got the delivery factor and.
Right. Can I just ask a question here, on the 4B, the types of establishments and stuff, and it lists 6 of them here, there were only 5, I think, when we did medical. Marijuana microbusiness did not exist. And at that time, we voted to allow 1 marijuana grower, 1 processor, 3 retailers, 1 compliance, and 1 secure transport, I think. Do those places, do we have a marijuana grower in place now?
All we have, as far as I know,
I don't think
is
so.
the one dispensary.
I think
Okay.
that's it.
We have
I know we had interest in
We
it.
have one provisional license for grow.
that's.
We do,
structure.
okay,
But
but
it
it's
has-
not active,
It's not
It's
active.
okay.
You know,
Can that one, if that goes, can they do both kinds?
Only if you approve it here.
Okay,
I mean, the only thing they have is a provisional license for medical marijuana, to grow medical marijuana.
okay,
It has to, this is a whole different thing.
okay, so that was my question. So we would need, if we wanted to do that, we would need another grower, maybe,
Right.
or we said, the heck with it, we don't need any growers for this. And then, okay, that's kind of what it needs. So we would probably want to say, probably, yes to another grower, yes to a processor, however retailers we want, maybe a transporter and a safety compliance. I mean, as we did before, and we got,
Because it's all separate. You can't- you can't-
okay, all right, that's my question.
So you have to keep in mind that that gives you two growers in the community, two transport, you know,
Mhm.
it's double.
Mhm.
So just when you're thinking those things through.
Yeah, although I will say though, like, that's the problem, we had 3 provisional approvals out there for provisioning centers. There's only one in operation, and there's a good reason for that, and I'm assuming it's the same thing with the grow. I don't think there's a market for
Well,
it.
if they can't sell to retail, they're probably not growing
Right.
it. I mean, I think the growers have advantage.
Right,
too.
so I do think that the reality is that whatever you allow for recreational is the number you're gonna end up with. I mean, I think that's probably true.
Okay.
Unless something changes.
Yeah, right.
Market conditions, like you
Right.
said, they
Right.
change dramatically for medical, I mean.
Well, yeah.
So let's just thinking out, let's say, okay, we have an opportunity for a grower who right now is saying, not interested. If we were to approve another marijuana grower for adult, now they can go, aha, now I'm back in the game.
They
They
can
yeah,
apply.
now I'm interested.
They gotta
Now
apply,
I'm in-
though.
Yeah, right, same thing, but now I'm interested, where not so much before.
Right.
Because there was no market.
And, and this is another thing, because I know there were people and I can understand it too, this idea of preference for those people, who are already doing it. And one of the, there are factors that you folks can consider, that's one of the things you think about when you put in here. Experience with this type of stuff, that type of thing. How is the community gonna benefit? So if there is somebody out there that did it and is doing it, that could help in that regard. You can't just say, if you already are here, you got it, that's just not gonna work. But I think if you tailor these factors to give weight to that kind of experience and that type of thing, you will, in a sense, I think, help an individual who's already been here.
You can, I mean, I'm just looking at these, but when you start looking at this and look at these, whatever factors you can also weight, right? You can say, experience is twice as important as this. I've done that with like a bid from a contract.
I didn't see anything that would forbid you to do
Yeah, so you would say, of the factors, okay, whatever it is, so when you come up with a total, maybe if I give somebody 10, something else, this is a factor of 3, maybe 30 of the total.
Yeah, sure.
So we could, not only can we do it, we can weight the factors.
I think so. You may think one is more important than the other. I don't even think you have to come to a consensus. I think you could just, for you, it might be factor 1, and for somebody else, it might be factor 3.
I would think for consistency, we probably, as a commission, would have to have consensus coming, because if you're saying, well, Audrey
Wouldn't it be
didn't
clear
do,
in the ordinance?
I would assume that,
Yeah.
It could be, but it
because
doesn't
just because
matter.
somebody's saying, well, they're not being consistent. One guy thought this was really important, another thought that. I think we would have to say, I think we're more defensible if we say, as a commission, we've weighted the factors this way.
I would agree that the less subjective we can make it, the better.
Yeah.
The better it
I guess the
stands.
only, I mean, that certainly makes sense. The only issue, I guess, down the road is, different, you're gonna have, you see
No,
something
and I
filled by
think
different
they can
people who
look
are
at
gonna
the
have
ordinance and
They
change
change
it.
different point in time, like everything we do is.
They have to.
But I do think, a consistency in terms of how we view it.
Sure.
Those agreements we come to as a group. I do.
I thought it was interesting, like of all the cities, the city of Portage is the one that I kind of liked the best on what they did. They obviously did things a little bit slower, but they have a retail requirement where you must have a current medical license in their community for 2 years before they allow you to go recreational. So it gives them,
Really?
yeah, it just, I mean, it gives them the opportunity to make sure that they're.
Has that been
valid.
checked?
No, they don't, they're the ones that say, no lawsuits on the bottom of all the information that we have.
That's interesting,
But they
'cause that-
also, though, they said that we started very, very slow. We went, you know, we did everything kind of at a slower pace. We rolled everything out in stages and, they have 10 retail.
So they must have lifted the restrictions then for the medical, so then anyone could apply for it, and then if you had it for 2 years, then you could transition
If
into.
you were, yeah, and I don't know how many in place for medical they already had when they, or if they came in and were.
It would be interesting
If it's
though, you
a
know,
two-year
maybe-
requirement,
I
it's been
can
there
ask
for a
them.
while, yeah.
And here's the thing, they have 10,
They have
so I
10
could see
retail.
why that might be lawsuit proof. Let's say the city of Elma is gonna only do 1 or 2. But let's make it real easy for me, let's just say they're only gonna do 1. And they're just gonna give it to consume. That might be a problem. You
Sure.
see what I'm saying as far as the
Looks like
lawsuit?
a rigged game, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that, you gotta be careful there. I get the sentiment, and I understand it, and frankly, I think to some extent it's fair. Because, you know, there were 3, you know, entities that said, we're gonna do this, and only 1 did it. And I think that should mean something. But I think you have to be careful there. In
So
my
kind of the
mind.
way to get around that would be then to lift restrictions, you basically can have as many as you want in, or as many as the city can support.
Well, I think
As
the
long as
import-
you met that 2-year window, you couldn't put a cap
Right,
on the back.
right, or you could make it high enough.
Yeah, or you can make it high enough
Yeah.
where you don't hit that.
I mean, a
limit,
10,
so.
a 10, or even, you know, maybe
I don't
5.
think there's the market didn't support it
Can't
near
imagine.
that, right?
Yeah.
And then you could also obviously alleviate some of those concerns with setbacks and things like that to help.
Yeah, right.
You would have them in certain zoning districts,
Yeah.
and then you'd have,
Yeah.
then you would put in setbacks from either schools, playgrounds, or
Right.
you want distance, similar businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, and Portage is a bigger community,
It's a lot.
but even if you said 5, you'd be hard pressed, I would think, to find 5 locations that are gonna.
But I think that shows the investment. I
No,
think
I
it
get it.
shows,
I get it.
you know, if you want it bad enough that you're
Absolutely.
gonna be a part of this community and, you know,
Well,
I don't know, I think it shows a little bit of skin in the game. you know.
Absolutely.
And honestly, Audra, that's been one of my biggest concerns is we've had, and I've talked to Tony this, like, we probably went round and round about it, but we had 3, medical licenses. We only had really, with the intention that they were all going to try. Literally, we had 1 good faith effort. And I appreciate consuming what they've done and the information that he's brought to, that he brought to the meeting and on many different bases, but it's hard for me to kind of reward some of these other companies that have just basically just said, you know, hands off, we're gonna let him handle every part of this. And then when it switches over, we're gonna take our license and try to run through the.
I get
open
mad
door
every
way.
time I drive out by Burger King at that eyesore that
Correct.
sits out there. Even my little 8-year-old niece asked me the other day why that's still sitting there.
As
like
well
that.
as another condemned building that's downtown, that's for sale, that's been for sale for a long time, that's sitting there in a state where, as an investor, my wife and I looked at it, and you just can't get it back to a profitable state in the state that it's in. And that was one of the similar buildings that
Right.
failed to.
Talking about the one on Center?
Yes.
You could, I mean, we probably ought to have a work session so we can spend more time on this, but to me, one of the things that you get out of someone who's been here is you have concrete evidence. Is there a way to say either evidence of this or some equivalent evidence that would suggest you can do this? And that,
Absolutely.
because that gets you away from where you're just going for this one, you're saying, look, they didn't come up with it, but we asked them, and here's how we define what equivalent, have you done this in other communities? But
Yeah, the first factor, even in this one, is the applicant's experience in operating other similarly licensed businesses. The applicant's general business management experience. If you're talking about, yeah, there's only been 1 group that, you know,
And
put the money where
here,
their
I
mouth
mean,
wasn't done.
the only thing that allows it, it opens up for other people to say, I have evidence. But they have, it has, that's an evidence-based way of doing this as opposed to saying,
Yeah.
it puts us in better.
And if you put
What
a
I think is-
stipulation of a year, then at least now it's open to interpretation, it's a set, you hit your milestone.
You don't even come to the table.
Yeah, it's not, it takes our hands, we're hands off on that, did you meet your, a year, 2 years, whatever it may be.
The only thing I would say there, only caution is, then you're gonna have a number, you're gonna have to allow a
More than
number.
one,
Yeah, and I think probably more than 2, frankly, but yeah.
I think what's interesting though, I'm not here, so I'm gonna call them out, but like Loom, for example, they have built those huge, beautiful buildings all over the state. And now they're slowly going out of business. I think what, they closed 6 or 8 last month?
They closed 3 and then I grow, right?
I thought it was up to 6, okay, but what do people do with those buildings now? I mean, they're
Yeah.
2-story, I
Yeah,
mean, they're, you know, like,
yeah.
there's a huge one sitting in the middle of downtown Mount Pleasant, or not
Right.
downtown, but the
Right
business
on.
section of,
Yeah, yeah. What,
but, you know,
make a nice apartment building.
yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Or something.
So even
They don't need
sometimes
those
the
anymore.
beautiful
No, I know.
building with the reputation might not be, I mean, how do we know, you know, you don't know, you're not
That's
gonna
true.
know. I mean, it's like any business, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
You
they
don't know, so.
probably was in some office buildings. Good thing.
Or it could sit all over.
Better, it's so
Yeah.
big.
Hey, yeah, it depends on local demand, I mean, but
Yeah.
it's the market for real estate. Sure.
I do really hope that whether we're in a work session or not, I hope some, like, you know, this is obviously probably gonna happen, so I just put some thought into the way we want our city to look. You know, I was just in Cadillac the other day, and they have a couple of, dispensaries, but they're not in the downtown, they're on the outskirts, they're very beautiful looking buildings. You know, it complements the atmosphere, you know, which is a very beautiful area, and it's a resort town, and just, if we're gonna add more of these, businesses to our city, then I hope we do it the right way, and
I would agree, and I think it goes beyond just this industry. I think in general, some of our building standards and lighting standards and whatnot can be addressed and improved, and to make us a more attractive, hospitable, inviting place. You know, not that we're bad, but there's always room for improvement in everything, so I think that's a very valid point.
One of the requirements, I believe, in the application process, in this ordinance is, what are the graphics that you're gonna utilize on the side of the building, and what is it gonna say? What's the name of the building? Because, you know, or the business, I should say. Because, you know, yeah, you don't necessarily want the stencil of the reefer guy with the, you know what I mean? And you know what I'm saying? I mean, no, seriously though.
no, you're right,
And that
you're
stuff
right,
is
and
important.
there's actually information like at the state level about that too, cause
Yeah.
I had Sarah Krebs go through your ordinance, and she sent me some information about signage that's from the state level, their recommendations and some of the things, cause you do have to be careful when it
Yeah,
comes to
so you may
signage.
have some of that in there.
But-
Yes,
There is.
Yes, you
That's
do.
what-
Yeah,
She
but
was
that's
actually
completely
complimenting
changed
what you
now
had in
from what,
there
from what
and
those
how it's in line with the
regulations were to
I
what
gotta
it
tell
is
you.
now.
When I hear Sarah, it scares me.
She's a grown-up now.
She's tough.
In the old
She is, but she's
regulations,
actually complimenting.
you
that
couldn't
have a
mention
lot of-
the word marijuana, you couldn't have anything, I think you were allowed the green cross, but you could not have the marijuana leaf or anything in it but now clearly you can, because the ones that you see, you know, they've come up with very, very clever names. I went through Lowell the other day, and there's one, it's just a great name, you guys let us steal or something, the best joint in town. So, you know, but, I mean, that's obviously changed, but again, you don't want that stuff all over the place, it just looks like, hey, this is marijuana haven in here to do.
I think that stuff is important, though. I really do. I mean, it's how you absolutely.
Okay, that's all I had, because the other stuff we dealt with in the agenda, so those are two things. I
So
wanted to bring
can I just say, sometimes you just, or not you personally, but historically, we've just thrown out a date, all of a sudden it'll come through my email that this is the work session date, and it's like, well, I can't be there, or I can't. Can we kind of plan a date at some point that we know we're all
Let's,
going to be able
let's,
to?
do it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, right
Cause
now.
that drives me crazy when I've got other stuff going, and then all of a sudden,
I'm here to work whatever you guys,
Okay.
what you guys are, I make myself available for you.
I mean, I guess I could send you my notes.
You got Michelle too, but
Yeah, to do.
and I'm sure she feels pretty strongly about this.
Yeah, would it be better to
We
send
have
a
a
few
fifth
dates
Tuesday
with
coming up.
Michelle?
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Maybe
like-
Next week is
Oh, I
a
can't,
fifth
that's just-
Tuesday.
How about the 6th?
Hmm?
How about 6th, September 6th?
Yeah.
September 6th, you just had a meeting.
ZBA,
How about 2 or 3 dates, and then that way Michelle has a shot.
Or if we started like, if we tried maybe an hour before a commissioners meeting, just
Yeah.
to start, just to maybe have our first talk
We
session,
should
and
talk
then,
about that, yeah.
and then we know Michelle will be here at 13, instead of 5, maybe. I mean, I don't know what time she
Yeah, I would be looking.
You wouldn't?
for
Oh,
5:30,
okay.
yeah.
Maybe that's kind of.
Maybe coming in February increase, whatever.
Okay, we'll take it.
We're not here to judge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just wash your hands before you walk in.
It still wouldn't help.
I think there's a fire hose up here.
Wouldn't
Spray it down.
I don't know.
Already showing us something.
I think that I would try to stay away from capping it at an hour, because I think the conversation could, I want it to be
Well,
as
that's why I meant
productive as
just for
possible.
start.
Oh, true,
Just
maybe.
a jumping off point.
But, yeah, I agree.
It's
A
gonna take-
clean night is probably gonna be
It's
easier.
like 8 hours conversation.
I mean,
That's what it takes, I mean, it needs to be thorough, there's a lot of details that we can work through.
I really can't do it, and if it's too short notice, my husband's working at Athens, so. I can ditch him for a lot of things, but.
Sixth? Tuesday the sixth, that's the first Tuesday.
But here, just it is immediate. We just depleted that.
Nice try.
Yeah, come
All
on,
right,
Roger,
okay.
keep up.
All right.
well, you could, how about the seventh? It's Wednesday, but.
I'm clean.
No reason we can't meet on Wednesday, I don't think, unless somebody's got a conflict.
I'm clean on the seventh.
Do you wanna check with Michelle, Eric,
Yep,
before we
I will,
confirm?
I will text her
Okay.
after our meeting.
I mean, I'll put it in the calendar, but just,
At six, we just said six.
6 P.M., yeah, I guess that
Yeah,
time we
because
did.
anytime he washes hands.
I don't have any of my TV programs that night, so we're gonna.
Well, then why should I have a free evening? So let's,
Okay,
All right.
okay, 6 P.M. I'll
September.
reach out to,
September.
I'm sorry, September. Jeez. Yeah, September. I will reach out to Michelle. Thank you.
Okay. So I believe we have a motion on the table.
Right.
Are there any more comments?
Forgot when we're.
We're receiving the two reports.
Right.
Any further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor would be yes.
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 Any opposed would be no. Motion's carried. We've received those financial reports. Moving on to appropriations. Is anybody in favor of paying the bills?
So
Put your
moved.
name on it.
Yeah, let's pay it.
Okay. Any support for this?
Support.
Okay, there is support. Any comments or questions? Anybody here's a question? All those in favor would be yes?
yes.
Yes.
Any opposed is no. Okay, the motion is carried. Moving on to new business. Liz Harrington.
Yes. Okay,
Executive Performance on water.
we met on August 12th. Tom Reed has resigned from GAWA, so St. Louis has a vacancy to appoint. So we will miss Tom's input. We discussed the generator maintenance agreement, which was not a budgeted item, but we didn't previously have one. But so we had discussed, as we did tonight, that we would get a discount using the same. I put CO company, can't remember what my initials stood for. Same company as the city of Alma, so, main source of power needed for all well houses, Gallo plant in the city. Water production, July was the first of the new fiscal year, and Alma had a dry and good month. And then we had discussion about check valves, and Dave, I'll read my notes, but if I misspeak, feel free to
You don't have
interrupt
to
me.
get too deep into that.
Well,
We're still trying
we
to
talked
stay-
about that it vibrates, and so there's a butterfly style valve with an actuator that would give us more control. It's expensive, but we're jiggling this, in my understanding, my words, jiggling this big piece of equipment that gets out of whack, and if we could get some new, more robust valves in there, it would eliminate
This
possibly
is inside the
damaging.
plant then?
Yes, yes. So, those were our hot topics in August.
Thank you. Who has the first question for Roxanne?
Oh. It's like stomping chumps.
I was,
It's like
I'm just
black-
impressed with your, that was good.
The whole valve check.
Yeah, the valve
Yeah,
jiggling.
those technical terms, Roxanne,
Yeah,
we're
I
not
know.
like that. Yeah.
Good job.
One more time you're gonna hear from me, I apologize for that. I would tell her to give me a hand on that, that
Thank
really
you.
wasn't accurate, very quick, someone should have said that. One thing just to note is the well 12 transmission main is going to start up at some point here in the very near future. People traveling to school, this road is going to be a one-way road while that's going in, so travel in the morning or afternoon might be exact start date on that because we're still waiting on materials, but if anybody's been on Loose Road, you've seen the cones. So that's a good indicator that really any day now that we could see that, so just let everybody know, anybody has questions, that water main runs down the east, ditch line of Loose Road, but when we're doing the work, they're gonna have to close down to one lane, so probably be about at least a month's worth of traffic congestion, and then there's gonna be a section of time where that may be closed permanently when we do it for, so it's gonna be nice to add on.
Yeah, and did you, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm guessing that you talked to the superintendent or to let them know that that's gonna be happening so that maybe we can avoid, okay,
I'm gonna
thank
try to
you.
figure out, get a hammer date for.
Perfect.
Just so everybody knows, she was
Yes.
asking me about to contact the superintendent to let them know when that, closure happens. I'm gonna try to get an ETA on some more materials, and try to touch base with them, just give them as much notice. I can't ask them to delay the start time in the mornings because that would affect contract pricing, so if anybody gets asked on the public, why don't they wait till 8:30 to start this? Can't do that, so, anyhow, yeah, so.
Forewarned is forearmed,
Yeah,
yes.
and that's why I'm trying to let everybody know that, because that is a main argument, it's a main point of frustration on this road, but it's gonna probably be for at least a month.
The nice thing is the barrels are out, so people, I've been driving, it's kind of, I feel like the warning. You know,
Yeah, I
is-
was thinking,
but
what
yeah,
is-
definitely maybe
what's
a
going
notice
on
that
here?
people-
Yeah.
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 It's kind of nutty out there. It's a so.
Contrary to what my wife thinks, hiding the barrels won't stop the project, so.
Right.
They'll still.
And the
they'll still be
township's
closed.
aware of this too, right?
Yes.
So they're telling their folks that,
Yep, they've been well updated just because of, obviously, the well fields are out in their areas, and various agreements there.
and sent to dispatch as well, so that they know.
County Road Commission, all that was cleared for permitting ahead of time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Well, good, Jeff, I just wanted to add that.
I guess we didn't get a motion. Do we need a motion to receive Roxanne's report?
Sure. So moved.
We have a motion support. Any last chance for comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. We have received the report. Thank you very much, Roxanne. Great job. We did appropriations, right? So Commissioner comments. Audrey, would you like to go first?
I don't really have anything tonight, other than happy back to school week for St. Mary's and public school. It's a busy time. Sure there's some happy parents on it.
And children.
Yes.
Good to
it's
see your friends
definitely
again,
children,
so.
definitely children.
Not much, did want to mention Eric's, we're working with Keep On It Beautiful, so we're getting a proposal from them about a policy in terms of public art. Coming for us, so. It's another one of those additions, archaeology. Or archaeology, I don't dig up bodies, but here's one project for
Nick's
the
gonna
kids.
run the whole
But we
field.
but how the place looks, those kind of things, just.
Good news. Roxanne?
Just welcome back to school and thanks to all the families for their patience, as we launch this new online enrollment this year. I still believe it will be a wonderful, addition. It's just been slow moving, getting people educated that they have to actually register their kids to show up for school. So, yeah, it's gonna be a great year.
Just a quick reminder, Thursday night is the millage proposal, for you, so just a reminder to the public to, if you're interested in showing up for an information session on the millage, it's Thursday night at 8 o'clock, I believe.
No, 6 o'clock.
6
6
o'clock.
to 8. Yeah, 6 to 8.
No, 6 to 8.
Come in for the.
The after party.
You got the closing.
You get the real lowdown if you come in at 8. Anything else, Dan? Pleasure.
I don't think anything to add this time. New show in production.
So you did have something.
Since you brought it.
Okay.
Rounding third, really neat little play. We saw it at Williamston several years ago. 2 people involved with it, and it is, there's 2 people in the cast, basically 2 Little League coaches, one of whom is, we're here to win, and the other one
big deal.
Sure. Tony?
Oh, there is a community tailgate on Thursday before the first football game of the season. So there's and hot dogs and chips and water. There's the high school on Thursday. And you'll see the band perform and football team play, so.
Great entertainment, at a very reasonable price, I suspect.
Yes, yes.
Eric?
No, it's, just echo what Dan said, yeah, please, do come out and, hear about the, neighborhood street proposal. Lots of good information, Public Works is gonna provide. If you miss this one, we have 2 other opportunities, to attend. We've been putting those on Facebook, so please look at those 6 to 8, a lot out in the public library this Thursday.
Is there any way we could maybe build in like a 6:50, like, okay, you guys that are going to the football game, go ahead. I feel there may be some that will like, hey, I have to go, my kid's playing or
The
something.
door will be locked, you will stay.
Like, this is your intermission.
If you vote now, you can.
Yes. Well, that's the.
Early voting?
You can check out anytime.
We're gonna go
Yeah.
to
If you do have an opportunity, yes, go there.
There's others that.
Don't miss an opportunity first.
You can,
Hotel Village.
and also, just to put it out there to folks, you're more than welcome to call us and set up a time to come out and talk to us too, if you don't wanna, we're more than willing to sit down and walk through our maps and anything that you'd like to know about, neighborhood street village.
Terrific, thank you. I guess in addition to what everybody else has covered, which is most of it, I think, my thanks to the city staff. A couple of events at Wright Park this last weekend, my class got together for a 45th reunion, and we had an event Thursday night, and everybody's very concerned about the power being there, as well as for the next day, the all-class reunion that Sunday. Everything was there, up and running, it worked out great weather. So thanks to staff for that, we appreciate that. The restrooms were up and running, opened later for that concert, and so appreciation there. My class asked me to express that to you, so we're grateful for that. As well as the new facilities. We also had the opportunity as part of that, our class, we had a very exciting class about this reunion. And part of it, we did a tour of the high school, where they gave us a tour of the remodeled high school. I've been through it, being local, staying here, but a lot of people came from out of town. It was very fun to see their reactions, walking through the same old building we went to all those years ago and see the improvements and really the pride that the staff and superintendent in particular, school board president happened to graduate with us too at our clinic. The pride that is going on there is really impressive. There's some really cool things happening in our local school and just some great people working there. It's pretty neat. So we can all be very, very pleased with what's going on in school, I think. So, and gratitude for them for not only doing that, but giving us a tour. So that's my 2 cents worth. Any members of the public like to address the commission, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and share your thoughts.
Alan Martin, Consume Cannabis, 528 Warwick Drive here in Elmwood, Michigan. Thank you, great discussion tonight. Time is of the essence, yes, that is true. Definitely don't want to rush anything on your part. It is a very important decision, and we do understand that. But, we are currently running at a loss in our own facility because we are med only, and the statistics did come out that medical sales are down about 44%, and recreational or adult use sales are up 60%. So all of that is transitioning over to the rec side. You're also finding businesses that are not continuing to carry or produce med products, so it's getting harder to come by, which is compounding that issue as well. It is predicted that about 50% of the current cannabis businesses are expected to close due to overinvestment. And so that's something to think about too. We definitely want to come into community stay here. We have definitely tried to strategically build a business. We do have 11 facilities in 3 states, 2 grows, 2 processors, and 11 retailers out there in 3 states. So we strategically tried to ensure that we didn't, the statistics were closed 6, and they're expected to close 6 more. And again, that's just due to, but in my opinion, overinvestment. So those are some things that we've definitely, tried to make sure that we paid attention to moving into the industry, into the competitive market. Things are starting to slow down, prices are dropping, producers are not producing as much, there's more of them, so there's a lot of, things to consider. So again, thank you all for, listening to all of my rants and the information that I provided, and for taking the time to actually discuss it and move, in a direction with it, so, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? Hearing none, I think we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. A lot of support for that. All those in favor would be yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no.